ever gather too much in one place. I'd only ever gather a little bit here, but this is quite hard in the sun, so it's better to gather it where it's been in the shade and it's quite damp, and it just lifts straight off. Now this is Crottle. It's a lichen that grows where it's damp and where there's a lot of rainfall, and I think also we need to have very clean air for this to grow well. Now where that's been in the sunshine, it's very firm and would be difficult to lift that. Well, not difficult, but it wouldn't be quite so easy. So I would just come round here into the shade, and the lichen is damper round here and easier to lift. Whenever you're collecting lichen, only take a little piece from each area so that you don't devastate the plant. It wants to be left so that it can carry on growing. There's some more lichen here. You can really see the little fronds. That's a really nice cluster of lichen, of crottle. This is I won't lift that because it's just so nice to leave that, and this is really weathered, this wood. You can see this is an area of very high rainfall. The ground is boggy, and the lichen just loves this climate. There's lichen everywhere here. What we find is that it tends to fall out of the trees in the wind, and actually it's very often the flower of the lichen that's falling off. I just show you that. It's got little fronds, and that's what it throws up the next year. Some of these are the flatter ones. Now that one is a bluey green. I think it's all the same species. It all dyes a sort of golden brown colour. And of course in the wintertime there's a different dye pot that we have. We get more nuts and leaves and seeds and roots and barks for dyeing, and I often would use ivy leaves for just getting a green. You can use different mordants to get different colours from ivy leaves. They take quite a bit of cooking because they've got a tough exterior. There's also rhododendron leaves which will give another dye, all in the green yellow shades. So we've brought this piece of firewood here with the lichen on it, just so that you could see why it is that when it's a windy day this stuff just falls off onto the ground. And this is the bag of lichen that we picked up outside. When I've got this lichen from outside, if I don't want to use it straight away, I would be putting this out on a drying tray, and I just let it air dry. There's no need to have a dehydrator. It dries very, very quickly, and then you can keep that for quite a long time. I don't know how long because I always use it up, but I've had this lichen here. I think maybe I've had this a year in a clip-top jar. It was thoroughly dried, crunchy, and I just keep those like that on the shelf, and that can be used just the same as the fresh. So for this dye bath, I'm going to try a little bit of an experiment. I've got merino, silk, cotton. I've got spun blue-faced Leicester. This is commercially spun cotton, and I've got here a yellow
commercially spun and dyed yarn. It's a merino superwash with nylon in it. So I'm just going to have a go at dyeing a little bit of each of these so that we can see what the lichen does for each one. I would really recommend this book. Lichen Dye is the new source book. It's readily available, published by Dover. It's quite cheap, little paperback, and it's just about got everything you're going to need to know about lichen dye. Right, I've skeined off a few of these. This is the commercial cotton, and I've just soaked that bit of silk here, and we're just going to wash these, well, not wash them, sorry, soak in some hot water here. Be careful with silk when you're dyeing it. Anybody that's dyed with silk will know this, that it can be very difficult to wet. You think it's wet, give it a good squeeze there. Get the water to go right into the fibres. You can probably see what I'm doing there. Just really make sure that is wet, because the dry areas are not going to take the dye. Okay? Right, so my wool has been soaking for half an hour in there, and the cotton. And now I am going to load up the dye bath with lichen. I'm just putting that into the bottom here. I'm not going to use any more of that at the moment. Just a minute. The rest that I just picked from the woods. And I'm going to layer that across the bottom here. Okay, so you can see I just have a layer, one layer across the bottom there. Wet yarn, and I want a mottled effect. I don't want an overall dye that's just the same all the way over the wool. So I'm going to lay this down as you see I'm doing, so that it's touching the lichen. In some places, and then there'll be other places where it's not touching it quite so much. I'm going to put my silk in just there. I normally don't do a dye bath quite like this. It's normally all one thing, but because we want to experiment, I am putting all things in together. Now I'm putting another layer of lichen on top here, and this is the dried lichen. The one thing that can be annoying with this kind of dyeing is that the lichen has to come in contact with the fibre or the yarn, and it can stick to it and be a bit of a nuisance when you come to spin it, but it's usually not too bad. Okay, so I'm just laying that in there like that. I don't want to touch that too much because I don't want to felt it. I put a bit more in there. Now I've got some soft water here. I want to get this in here without disturbing this too much. Just when this used to be done for yarn for weaving in this country and in Scotland, this would have been layered in a big cauldron pot and put over the peat fire, but I don't have either. You can do this in a slow cooker, but if you do, your slow cooker will smell of lichen for some time. So you may want to have a special slow cooker that you keep just for lichen dyeing, which most people don't have. I'm going to put a little bit more. I like using the slow cooker because nothing boils over and it's gentle, and I just like that. And you can go away and leave it and do something else. Right, now you can't really tell, but that lichen that I just put on there, which was totally crunchy and had been in this jar here for the last probably 6 months, is soft. So that's how quickly it comes back to life. Right, that's all I'm going to do. Now I'm going to put my lid on. And this is going on the stove on my smallest ring on the lowest setting. So that's on the very, very lowest setting. So that will be a long time coming up to simmer. And we'll leave that there now for 2-3 hours. Right, I've left this to cool overnight. It was simmering for about 3 hours on a very low heat. And you can see, I just wanted you to be able to see as I lift these off that the colour from the lichen has just seeped into the wool. And it's left a sort of mottled effect. Right, I'm just lifting these out of the pan now. This was the yellow. Wow. Oh, that was the commercially spun and dyed yellow. We'll show it up against the original in a minute so that we can see what this dye bath has actually done. Sometimes you get really good colours and sometimes you get something very disappointing, and I would say that this is in the disappointing category. All right, that's everything gone. And now I'm going to rinse those. You'll see as I put this silk in here, the pieces will float off it, which is probably the easiest way of getting rid of them. Now they won't all come out, and we're not going to worry about that because as we work this and as the fibre dries, the little pieces will just fall off of their own accord, so that's good enough. This one you have to be very careful with because merino will felt very quickly, and I don't want it to be just a solid matted mass of wool, so I'm just being very gentle with that. Let those little pieces float off. And the rest of that lichen that's on there, just going to probably leave that. It'll fall out when I come to spin it because it'll be dry and crunchy. I just want to say a little bit more about this crottle. It's a very old dye. This has been, we have records of this being used as a dye bath for 2,000 years. The recipes for this kind of dyeing are many and varied. Some people say you boil it for an hour, or you boil it for 3 hours and you leave it for a week, or you leave it overnight, or you take it out straight away. So really it depends what you want to do, what you want to try. If you leave this in overnight, there's going to be more dye attaches to your fibres, and you get a better result, a faster result, and that's sort of holds true with a lot of vegetable dyeing. You'd leave it in overnight. I didn't give any quantities here. You probably noticed that. I just layered it in as looked right to me. Experiment. It's there isn't really any rules here. You just try it and see what you get. Right, these pieces of fibre and wool are dry, so I've laid them out on a white surface here so that you can see what the dye has done to the dry, once it's dry. This is silk. This is how it started out, and that's what it looked like when I've dyed it. So as you can see, that's a bit disappointing. I hope the camera is picking up the colours here. It's really not taking the dye very well at all. If I were to do this again, I would put in more lichen, and I would soak it for a longer time, I think, together, and then I think I would boil it up one day and let it cool overnight, and then boil it up the next day and let it cool again, and see if that helped. It has taken the dye a little bit, but it's disappointing. This one, I think you can see, hasn't taken the dye at all. Maybe a teensy weensy bit there, but not so she'd notice. So that again needs to be dealt with, I think, like the silk, a lot longer, and in contact with more of the lichen. But lichen will dye cotton. It's just that didn't work out very well, and the point of this is to show you how things went rather than to edit out the bits that didn't work out so well. This, I think, has done very well, and just doesn't that show you that the lichen has the dye has attached to the wool much more easily than cotton. That's how it started out, so you can see the difference. That's actually a different ball of wool, but that's the same colour. So, and there's also a mottling in there, you can see, which is what I wanted. I wanted a sort of splodgy, uneven look. This one I think is the most successful. It started out this colour, and you can see how well that's picked up the dye. Okay, so this one I think is the most exciting. This is a piece of merino, and you can really see where the lichen was coming in contact with the wool, and then where it wasn't, but there was a golden colour in the dye bath, and there again on that side. And you just look at that. Isn't that lovely? And it started out like that. So you can see the depth of dye that we got on that. And we didn't use that much lichen. You could use a lot more. You could boil it up a second time. You could leave it for longer, and you might get a much deeper. See that blob there? It's brilliant. Just to show you another lichen dyeing that I did. This is a commercially spun 4-ply wool, and I initially mordanted this with alum, and then I dyed it with lichen just the same as I did this, and then I over dyed it with some madder root dye. It was just some waste that I had, and you can see the pinkiness in there, but I didn't put all of this in. I only put little portions of it in, so that we ended up with this variegated rainbow colouring in there. If you want to mix more dyes into your skein of yarn or your fibre other than lichen, just remember that you do have to pre-mordant the wool, because lichen obviously doesn't need the mordant, but other dyes do. That wouldn't have taken if I had just tried. I mean, if I went and took this now and I tried to over dye that with some madder root, it wouldn't work, because I haven't pre-mordanted that. So that's the end of our lichen dyeing. Thank you.